Hey friends, welcome back to another daily reflection. My name is Brandon Forshino, and I'm so glad that you're joining me. Whether you are seeing this on my YouTube channel or you're listening to this podcast episode on any of the podcast apps that you prefer, thank you for being here. Today's reflection is based on the daily readings found for Tuesday after Epiphany. Our first reading comes from 1 John chapter 4, verses 7 through 10, and today's gospel comes from Mark chapter 6, verses 34 through 44. So let's dive right into the first reading for today. So if yesterday's reflection about love was not enough, today's first reading, we see that John continues on with this theme of God's love in addition to Christian life. Specifically speaking, the responsibility that we have to love one another. So what's love got to do with it? Of course, as I was reading today's first reading and I spent time reflecting on it, I couldn't get that song to come out of my head. Although the answers aren't going to be found in this popular song's lyrics, today's readings really point us to the greatest answers and even the source to produce this type of love. The first thing we find in today's reading is that John reveals that love is of God and that everyone who loves is begotten from God and knows God. You see, I'm reminded of one of the Gospels where Jesus says that we are known by our fruits. You see, Jesus uses this agricultural imagery to essentially identify the nature of the source that ultimately determines the quality of the fruit. And he's pointing to our own lives. Before we get into the quality of the fruit, I think today's readings help us to really better consider the source. That is, the roots of our trees more than the fruits that bear from these trees. You see, I've said it before in other reflections, but we have to be more root-minded than fruit-minded, because if we focus on the roots, then everything that comes out of this tree will bear good fruit. And see, John really echoes and edifies this statement by revealing the source of the love that we have or not have. You see, we learn that one, love, the fruit, is of God, the source. And two, everyone who loves is born now of God, and we are made his sons through the work of Jesus Christ. And when we love one another, we are illustrating the nature of that source, which is God. Not only are we revealing God's love to others in the world, but we are also edifying and representing God in our own life. And therefore, others can know him too. Whoever is without love does not know God. So back to this agricultural metaphor. If we are rooted in God's love through Christ, we will have it to give. So in summary of this first part of today's first reading, love as we share it, it testifies to the nature of God, who is the source, and it also testifies to the presence of God and his love in our own lives. It's also important to understand that this love is a free gift of God. And just as we receive this free gift, we must also be freely willing to give this gift of love to others. After all, which tree in the agricultural sense does not produce fruit in order to give to others for life and for food and for some sort of need? So just as fruit from a tree is meant to be given, so too are the gifts of God meant to be given to others. However, love, or any virtue for that matter, does not grow overnight. I think another great point for us to consider is the cultivation process. It's the work of God in our hearts to produce this fruit. See, this requires light. This requires the rain. It requires water. So in a similar way, we need to remain under the light that is Jesus Christ and the water of God's word that washes over us. We need to get to know God, who is love, and his son, Jesus, who is our light and our life. And as we turn to today's gospel, we see exactly what this looks like as Jesus performs the miracle of feeding the 5,000. What sticks out to me is when Jesus sees the vast crowd, he's moved with pity for them, noticing that they were like sheep without a shepherd. And eventually he would notice their hunger as they had been sitting under his teaching all day, and it was time for them to eat. Jesus asks the disciples to gather what they had, and Jesus performs this amazing miracle of the multiplication of 5 loaves and 2 fish. And the scriptures in the gospel today reveals that they all ate and were satisfied. It's this scene that ultimately points to the interest of the early church in their Eucharistic gatherings. This miracle, by the way, is still being performed every time we gather for Mass. And it's the Eucharist that gives us this same satisfaction to all who take and eat. You see, friends, the Eucharist is the source of our faith. It's the source that produces love and the virtues that come from following God and knowing God. Jesus present in the Eucharist is what gives us life. It's what enables us to experience the growth and produce the fruits of love and enable us to love one another and share this gift of love with the world. Likewise, Jesus wants us to gather what little we have available to give. In a way, our own 5 loaves and 2 fish. Jesus wants to multiply that and wants us to give the gift of love to a hungry and broken world. Friends, thank you so much for tuning in for another daily reflection. I look forward to sharing with you tomorrow. Until then, God bless.